Okay, good evening, everybody. Can I get a thumbs up if you can hear me? Anyone?
Read you
All
loud
right.
and clear.
Oh, thank you, sir. Yes, good evening, everybody. I am Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Alex Terry from Purdue University. Today, we're hosting a Space Force career night for everyone interested that's going into the Space Force or just cadets interested. So, first, I would like to thank all the Space Force officers for joining us and taking time out of their day to share their knowledge with us. Also, I want to thank all the cadets and interested officers for joining us as well. So as a preface, this meeting will be recorded and can be sent out if you want it for further review, or send out to your detachments for further review. Following each brief from each career field, we will have time for questions. We only have about 3 to 4 minutes after each brief, so if there's any unanswered questions, we can send them up to the officers in case. Unfortunately, tonight we were unable to have a cybersecurity officer. However, I am trying to line one up, and any questions that you may have, I can forward to them, and I can get back with you. My contact information will be dispersed at the end of the career night. So first up, on one of our line of excellent speakers, we have the Space Operations Group speaking, and that is Lieutenant Kajara and Lieutenant Schiller. If either of you can request a screen share, then I will grant access.
Hey, Alex, before we dive in, who all do we have on the net? Is it all just cadets from Det 220, or is it cadets from across the Northeast region?
Yes, sir. We actually have cadets from across the entire nation joining us today. Yes, sir. So Lieutenant Sheeler or Lieutenant Kajara, if you would request screen share, and I'll try and grant that.
I'm not sure if they're in their meeting right now or in the meeting right now, so we can always just move on to the next speaker. And then if they show up, we'll go back to them.
Okay, we will start with the Acquisitions Manager Group. So that'll be Major Fulenkamp and Captain Perea.
I had planned to use the first 15 minutes to draft out my talking points, so I guess you guys are just going to get it on the fly here.
Yes, sir. If you have any slides, feel free to request screen share, and I will get that set up for you.
Nah, we'll try to keep it pretty open-ended and hopefully generate some discussion and some questions. So appreciate you guys hosting us, and anytime I think we get to share about what we do with like-minded individuals and people who aspire to hopefully follow in our footsteps, it's always a good night. So appreciate everyone dialing in. So I'm actually a grad of Det 643, which is also in the Northeast region. It's Wright State University, but I was a crosstown cadet at the University of Dayton. So go Flyers. And I root for the Buckeyes. So sorry for all you Boilermakers out there. But don't hold it against me. I know we've got Captain Ray Popcorn Pereira on. Oh, there we go. I see someone that said go Flyers. Now we're talking. I know we've got Popcorn on. Was there anybody else from One Stops that was able to dial in, just so I know who's out there? All right. Looks like it's probably just Ray and I. So cool. Well, so I know the agenda had acquisitions, acquisition manager brief, and some of the other stuff talked about engineers. So the two of us that are in the 6X community here, myself and Captain Pereira, we are both engineers, but the term acquisitions actually covers a broader community writ large. So in the Air Force, on the Air Force side, your 6X career field includes your 6-1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s. So your scientists, your engineers, your program managers, your contracting officers, and your finance officer folks. So the term acquisition officer can actually be kind of broad and can cover a whole host of stuff. Of those in the Space Force, although I'm still wearing the Spice Brown, I'm hoping to transfer here later this summer once it's approved by the Senate. Only 6-2s engineers and 6.3s are part of that Common Core AFSCs that are going to transfer over to the Space Force. So our engineers and program managers are going to transfer. Everybody else is going to stay in the Air Force, and many other AFSCs are going to continue to provide that support to the Space Force as needed. So obviously trying to keep the numbers smaller, keep it much flatter organization. Not all of those acquisition career fields are gonna move over. So I can speak a lot on the engineering and a little bit on the PM side. So much like in the Air Force, the Space Force is going to have a variety of different jobs that engineers and program managers can do. So typically, I'll start kind of from where we came from. In the Air Force, engineers and acquisitions officers are going to kind of fall within the full spectrum of acquisitions. So acquisitions can be anything from the early acquisition days of research and development at the Air Force Research Lab, all the way to operations. And where you fall in that spectrum a lot of times just depends on what your unit is or where you're assigned to. So there's anything from the R&D. You've got a lot of test and evaluation, which I know Captain Pereira can talk a little bit more to if folks have specific questions there, to the program management side, where engineers and PMs tend to overlap quite a bit. And then there's also the operations, where you get embedded with an operational unit, which I would say is much more common on the space side. So like, for example, myself and Captain Pereira, we're both here at the 1st Space Operations Squadron, and we are directly embedded in that ops unit, providing, helping the team provide effects to a combatant command to be able to employ our weapon system to achieve that desired effect that the COCOM is looking for. So it can range from a whole lot of different things, depending on what you want and kind of where you would like your career to go. So I think it's a pretty open-ended career in that sense. Generally speaking, the approach that the Air Force took is the first half of your career, you're kind of building up expertise across the board. So kind of think of a mile wide, inch deep across there. So for me personally, I started at the lab, went and got my master's degree, ended up at a system program office, working alongside the program managers, helping build the systems. And now I'm in space operations, helping to employ those systems. Many people will have a similar career field, or career track. They may take a different approach, where they start off and they may start in flight test, or they may go off and work directly into a SPO after they receive their commission. It really just all depends kind of on the needs of the Air Force or the Space Force at the time. Still TBD in terms of what that's going to look like on the Space Force side, in terms of how they're going to employ the engineers and the acquisitions officers. I've heard some discussion about essentially allowing people to gain more expertise, more depth in whatever particular area that they want. So as opposed to coming in and trying to get a little bit of everything across the board, may allow for people to dive right in and go straight into which kind of area of expertise they're looking, whether that be R&D, test, operations, etc. So something to keep in mind. I know a couple of the questions or materials that were ideas that were ginned up had to do with training pipeline for the career. So on the engineering side, obviously the first step is to get your undergrad in some level of engineering. It's a prereq. You can't become an engineer without it. On the PM side, you don't have that same stipulation. So any undergraduate degree in commissioning will allow you to go off and do program management. A lot of times we end up seeing folks who studied business of some sort end up going into those roles, or project management. Obviously, that's a 1-for-1 that go into those types of roles, but it's pretty much open to anybody. All acquisitions officers, though, regardless of their specific shred out, are going to early on in their career head off and go get the fundamentals of acquisition, which is just the early initial training. But I would say most of the training that we end up getting is done through continuous learning. So classes throughout our career through the Defense Acquisition University, DAU, as well as a lot of on-the-job training. day to day, what you can expect, I mean, it really all depends on where you are. My first assignment at the lab is altogether differently than what I'm doing here. But I think you're going to be looked at for either your technical or your programmatic expertise in whatever area it may be. Again, it just is going to depend on kind of where you are. Let's see, difficulties and challenges that new Air Force or Space Force, lieutenants may face in our career field. I think on the Space Force side, one of those challenges is going to be just trying to understand what this new service looks like and what we're going to be doing with people when they first come in. There's definitely some unknowns there. But at the same time, I think it's an exciting opportunity to get to be a part of a brand new service and get to be there to help us figure out and solve those challenges and figure out the direction that this particular career field, or more broadly, what the acquisition career field is going to look like within the Space Force. So I guess with that, that's my quick and dirty introduction to acquisitions and engineering and program management. I want to really open it up and see if there's any questions that anybody may have that myself or Captain Pereira can answer. Over.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to cue your mic up or send it in the chat.
Yeah, sure. I have a question. I'm actually commissioning in May, and I'm going to be at 62E, so right on engineers. But do you think the Space Force is going to have like another batch of engineers from the Air Force rather than that initial, or are they going to kind of trickle in, or are they going to try to direct commission engineers? And also, it could be Space Force or the Air Force, but do they encourage you to get like your professional engineering license or not, since you're just doing more of like a managerial side of things?
Sure. So I'll go ahead and answer the first one, and then I'll let Popcorn throw his 2 cents in on the second one, and we can riff off of that. To my understanding right now, that no, there's not I don't know. I don't want to misspeak. I have not personally heard of another batch or a second round of people transferring. I think what they're going to continue to look at is study the numbers and figure out, do they have the right mix? And what I mean by that is you can't just look at the numbers, the bottom line, if you will. So just because they wanted X number of engineers, it's important to make sure that you've got the right mix across all ranks, right? It doesn't do you any good if you have 100% manning, but it all happens to be lieutenants and captains. You need the right mix across the board, and so it's probably going to take some time for that to work its way out to get down to kind of what would be a steady state. But I don't have any specifics in terms of whether or not they're gonna open up another round. I think it's gonna depend entirely on what they currently have, and I haven't personally seen a lot of what those numbers look like. So, at least on the first question, did that answer? I know it's kind of a I don't know answer, but did it at least get after the intent of your question?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm sorry. Did you mention that you said you are 6'2" and you are going to be going Space Force, or you're going Air Force?
I'm 6'2", going Air Force. That's why I was curious,
Okay.
like if the transition was still gonna be possible later or not. That's kind of what I was wondering.
Yeah, I will throw this in there though. One, I think time will tell whether or not it's going to be possible, or there's going to be other opportunities for people to transfer. I did hear last week that there is conversations going on because 6'2s fall into what they call the common AFSCs, much like the program managers, the cyber, the intel folks. Those are AFSCs that are common now to both the Air Force and the Space Force. Both services have that exact same function. That at least on the engineering side, it sounds like there may be some conversation about opening up assignments to folks from either service to possibly go kind of cross flows, almost similarly to how we were doing it previously when we were just the Air Force, right? You could go off and you could do an air or a flight test assignment, and then follow that up with a space assignment, and then go back to the flying world. It sounds like there's some discussion about that being a possibility. So I would just, as you commission and you enter the Air Force, if getting a space assignment intrigues you, I just keep your eyes peeled for those kinds of opportunities as they come down. I'll let Captain Pereira though give you his opinion on the program, or the PM, the engineering certification, and we'll go from there.
So just to restate the question, you're asking about your FE or PE, right?
Yeah, I just didn't know if they like encouraged you to, because I know if they encouraged their engineers to get that qualification or not.
So I'm gonna just blanket statement, you're not gonna find anybody in the Air Force or Space Force that's gonna discourage you from professionally developing yourself across the board. And that includes getting permissive TDYs to go take care of these type of exams and all that. But as far as utility within the Air Force, there's going to be some trade over to, you know, help you do your job, but it's not going to show up on any of your paperwork. It's not going to help you in your career on paper, but in those soft skills that you'll develop, it'll certainly be useful. And I think if you are in any way, shape, or form considering not making the Space Force or Air Force a career, having your FE or PE is going to be just make you very, very competitive as you transition out of the Space Force or Air Force.
Yeah, that was my main, that was kind of why I was asking it. Like, as you would transition from the military to the civilian life, I knew those, like, I figured those kind of qualifications they mean a lot more to the civilian side than they would within the Air Force. And so I was curious if they would encourage you to get them while you were in or not. So thank you.
I have a buddy who ended up getting his PE when he made the choice to leave the Air Force and transition and open up his own practice. But he was able to do that while he was in as well. And the Air Force and Space Force both have an outstanding transition program for anybody who's separating, whether that's enlisted or officer.
Yeah, and Nate, one thing I would add, Popcorn's absolutely right. Also, dig in the background, Popcorn. I would also add that if you're considering doing or getting your FE or PE, especially the first one, the fundamentals, knock it out the closer you are to all the education you've been doing for the last nearly 4 years. I think once you get out, because again, it's much like anything, if you're out of practice, it makes it that much more difficult. So at least knock that out, understanding that you have to accumulate, so many years before you can test for the PE. I would highly recommend getting that done sooner than later. So that way it's as fresh in your mind now as it will ever be. So you might as well get it out of the way. Even if you're on the fence, I'd probably lean towards like what Popcorn said. It's not going to hurt you, and you might as well do it at this moment in time. Over.
And just amplifying information off of what Major Fallenkamp brought up about the time in the profession. It depends on where you are in your career, where your location, your assignment, or your day-to-day activities, I guess, if that counts towards being able to be qualified for time in the profession. I don't remember what the exact circumstances are, but my previous assignment was T&E and that counted. But some assignments won't count towards that time. I believe it's, I want to say it was like 2 years or something like that before you're even eligible to start looking at getting your PE. It might be longer than that even, but some of that time is dependent on the actual assignment you have. So just keep that in mind before you start running down the rabbit hole of getting it. Make sure whatever you're doing actually qualifies you to get it. Because that would be a real bummer if you went and took the test, aced it, and then went to the board and then found out that your experience doesn't count towards the exam.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I believe we all learned quite a lot from the acquisitions group there, talking about engineering as well. If there are any more questions, once again, I'll put up my contact information. I will send it up to the officers. Up next is Captain Panic with the United States Space Force Schoolhouse brief. Captain Panic, if you have any slides, feel free to ask for screen share and I will share them with you.
Nope, no slides on my end. I just have a lot to talk about, which I'm sure since we've already skipped I think like 3 groups already, I can probably answer quite a bit.
Yes, sir.
One
Floor is
thing,
yours.
everyone can hear me just fine, correct? Cool. All right, so just quick background on me. So I was from DET 842, that's University of Texas San Antonio. Graduated in 2015 with a psychology degree. So that's one thing right there that some of you may not have known. I believe Purdue is an engineering school. You don't need an engineering degree to actually be in the Space Force. I know they're trying to focus it on that, but if any of y'all are scared if you don't have an engineering degree, don't worry about it. I'm a teacher at the schoolhouse and I have a psych degree. I guarantee you'll be just fine. But yeah, so I've been in closing in on 6 years next month. And my background is in orbital warfare. So I graduated from tech school in March 2016, went to Schriever Air Force Base in Colorado with a orbital warfare discipline. Granted, I just got that discipline like a year and a half ago. But I went to the 3rd Space Operations Squadron and then it later turned into the 4th Space Operations Squadron. So my background is in military satellite communications. The folks down at OneSops deal with some TS, SCI, SAP programs that you'll learn about while you're with me at the schoolhouse. You also have 2 SOPs there as well. That's GPS. So everyone's heard of GPS. GPS is controlled out of Schriever Air Force Base, right next door to me at Schriever. Yeah, so did some time there, was a satellite vehicle operator, so I was controlling the satellites. From there, I went on to be a mission planner, so I was planning missions, various ones for my satellite systems. Then I was a crew commander, so I was in charge of the people controlling the satellites. And then I finished up my time there being in the weapons and tactics shop as an advanced training instructor, teaching threats, mission planning, debriefing, all that. And I finished up that in July 2019. So I've been at the schoolhouse since August of 2019. So I've been a little over a year and a half now as an instructor. So any questions you have about that, I'm more than welcome to answer. But just a few things I want to start off with. Since I'm the first stop for, well, everyone joining the Space Force, I've gathered quite a few questions, especially a bunch of that new people have no idea because we just don't advertise it. The biggest one being is the difference between the space disciplines. So it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of y'all think that most of what we do in Space Force is just launch stuff into space. That's all we do. Actually, you're not going to get anywhere near that. At least definitely from your first assignment, you're not going to do anything with launch. So the big 3 space disciplines that you're going to be put into one of these 3. You have orbital warfare, like myself. You also have space battle management and electronic warfare. And I'll talk briefly about each one. So orbital warfare, main thing you're going to be doing is controlling satellites. So those with that like aerospace engineering background or anyone who likes orbital mechanics, this could be the one that you want to put yourself into. Yeah, so places you can go with that. Main ones are going to be Schriever Air Force Base in Colorado Springs and then Buckley Air Force Base in Aurora, Colorado, or the Denver area. But again, that's mainly orbital mechanics type jobs. Next one, electronic warfare. So this one, you're working with a bunch of signals and propagating signals, looking at signals. And doing offensive or defensive space control. So if you're looking offensive, you have the 4th Space Control Squadron at Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado Springs. So these guys deploy quite a bit. They're doing essentially offensive space control stuff, so jamming out signals. Then you have the defensive space control side. That's the 16th Space Control Squadron, also at Peterson. These guys are geolocating, jamming. So if one of our satellites are getting jammed or someone's causing sort of jamming, the 16th Space Control Squadron, along with any of the reserve partners, are going to be there to figure out who's doing it and where they're at. So orbital warfare and electronic warfare, pretty distinct. You know exactly what you're doing. The other one is kind of everything else that's not mentioned in space, and that's space battle management. Big overview of space battle management. It's almost like, think of it as like the big picture type deal. So a lot of the lieutenants that leave our schoolhouse, and I'll talk about the training pipeline here in a second. Anyone who goes space battle management usually goes and starts their career at a radar. So those locations, you have Thule Air Base in Greenland. It's actually above the Arctic Circle. It's I think the DoD's northernmost base. Then you have Clear, Alaska. It's about halfway between Fairbanks and Anchorage. You have Cavalier Air Force Station in North Dakota. It's I think the closest one to Canada out of all our bases, beats Minot. Then you have Beale in the Sacramento area, Northern California, Cape Cod in about 45 minutes south of Boston. And then you have Eglin down in Florida. I might be missing one as well, but that's the list that I just came up with about 10 minutes ago. And then Eglin, is in the panhandle of Florida near Pensacola. But yeah, these guys, again, do radar stuff. So the 18th Space Control Squadron, another place you could go to here at Vandenberg Air Force Base. They are watching every time something launches, or watching all the space debris up in space. I think it's over 25,000 pieces of space debris at this point, and active satellites. Radar stations are the ones tracking all of these objects, and then the 18th Space Control Squadron are the ones that watch all these objects and catalog them. And they're the ones that tell all the radar sites, hey, can you watch this object? Where is it going to be at? What's going to happen? Are there going to be collisions in space? And if there is, where are those pieces going to go? Anytime there's a launch, we have different radar stations set to watch these launches occur. Believe there was a CNN special not too long ago, I think maybe it was a couple of years now, where Russia, for example, one of their satellites we thought was space debris actually moved. We have those radar stations set there to watch to see if something like that happens, because that's pretty significant. Why is there debris moving? And then further questions along those lines. But yeah, that's kind of the big differences between OW, EW, and SBM. And you will not be working at a launch squadron right off the bat. Most of that is actually going to contractors now. You maybe down the line for a second or maybe third assignment, work something with like launch support. That's going to be a maybe. Otherwise, you're going to be sticking to the three I just mentioned. So now talking about the training pipeline.
Hey, Alex.
Yep, go ahead.
Hey, this is Popcorn 6'2". Just want to make something a distinction here. You're talking 13Ss won't do launch straight out of the gate, because 6'2s can and do launch straight out of the gate.
Good clarification. Yes, so I'm a 13 Sierra, not a 6'2 or 6'3.
Yeah. Just want to make it clear that as you're talking these blanket statements, that applies to the operator career field, not the developmental. Just want to throw that out there for my one engineer probably in the crowd.
Good clarification. But even then, at leaving the schoolhouse, we don't have, at least in the year and a half that I've been here, we have not sent 6'2s or 6'3s to the launch support squadrons. So there is that as well. I think, for at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, at least for operationally, the 6'2s and 6'3s will do their OPEX tour at a operational unit, and then their second time and usually end up going to Space and Missile Systems Center down in Los Angeles. Does that sound right to you, Popcorn?
Yeah, that's pretty typical. You can go straight to launch. We have a guy who actually just came into the unit who just went from straight from commissioning to launch to one stops. But yeah, you'll typically get some sort of they call it OPEX tours. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that term, but that just means you're going to an operational squadron to support operations as an engineer. Typically, you're getting the Space Force is trying to shift a paradigm where we just interface with the System Program Office, also known as a SPO. We're not just a liaison for them anymore. We're actually getting more involved, especially OW, BIN. We're getting more involved in that mission planning process. So, but yeah, we do get the OPEX tour earlier in the career, and then use that as a leveraging point to bring some more operations experience to the acquisitions lifecycle management process.
Cool. Yeah, agree with everything he said. So getting to the training pipeline now. So once you commission, graduate, you'll go straight to us. Currently, it's still a permanent change of station, or PCS, to Vandenberg Air Force Base. And then you'll start off as used to be called a casual lieutenant. Now we're actually changing the name to project officers. General Raymond just doesn't like the word casual anymore, so we're changing to project officers. Basically, you're just going to be helping around the base, helping around the schoolhouse with various projects. And then you'll get assigned a class start date of which you can start class. So class will be 110 training days for the officers, which comes out to about 5.5 months, 5.5 to 6 months. So we'll cover all topics in space. We're more of a educational school rather than a tech school, because we don't teach you any jobs or anything that you'll technically use on the job. It'll be just knowledge based. But we'll cover everything. We'll start off with like history, doctrine type stuff, so a little bit more of the boring type things. Then you'll get into orbital warfare. So working with something called SDK, Space System or Systems Toolkit. We'll do that for a few weeks, and if you like orbital warfare type, or if you like that portion of the course, maybe you'll want to do orbital warfare. After that, we'll get into radio frequency technology. So that'll be mainly focused towards stuff that'll be happening in electronic warfare. So if you like that section of the course, we'll be working with signal generators, waveform generators, spectrum analyzers, stuff like that to just look at signals. So that'll be about a good month or so of the course. Then we'll get into basics of, say, space domain awareness, or usually used to known as SSA, space situational awareness, now space domain awareness. You'll cover military satellite communications, and then the basics of GPS. Once you get there, you hop into the TS, top secret portion of the course. You'll be inside a skiff talking about everything that all the space squadrons do operationally at a TS level. So you'll get much more thorough knowledge. It's really heavy knowledge that you're going to spend a lot of time studying. And then you'll finish up the course with a capstone event. It's about a 1-week capstone event to where you'll put all together all the information you've learned in the past about 5.5 months, and then show your knowledge via a sequence of briefs and mission planning type stuff that you'll do right at the end of the course before you graduate. All right, so you're done with our course now, and then you get to, most of you will PCS to your next duty stations, and then TDY to Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado for the Space Warfare Follow-On course. These are now focused on whatever space discipline you're in, OW, EW, SBM. And these are about 2 to 3 weeks of just focused knowledge on that, whatever your space discipline is. So not too long. And then after that, you'll go back to your unit, your home unit at your home station, and then you'll go through IQT or MQT, depending on the squadron, and then finish up your specific weapon system training. Mine, for example, lasted 3 months. I know some last 6 months. Some could even last longer, to like 8 to 10 months. That's just unit specific. But that's what the training pipeline looks like. So you'll be in training for, assuming that you don't have to wait for a class, it could be about a year of training before you actually do anything operationally. And that's on the faster side of the house. It might be up to like a 1.5 years before you get anywhere operationally. That's pretty much all I got for the training pipeline. Difficulties and challenges. From my perspective, the first thing you should focus on is just learning your job. That's the first thing you should worry about. Once you get that, start learning everyone else's job, what their job does on your operations floor. How does that affect you? How does your job affect them? And then learn your mission as a whole. I believe the major mentioned it earlier about continuing your education. I'd definitely do that as well. I don't recommend it while you're in training, because that is your main focus, is training. However, once you get to your first ops assignment and you're going to be working crew shifts, you're going to have a lot of time on your hands, and that's where a lot of people, and I recommend, start working on your master's degrees. When you get to the schoolhouse, we're going to have different discussions about different routes you can actually get your master's. We'll do that through first-term officer assignment briefs, as well as you're going to have a class mentor assigned to your class. And we'll talk all about it. We have a bunch of different topics that we can talk about. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I know I have personally, I've made a do's and don'ts list that I can share with, I believe it was Cadet Terry. So I can send him this PowerPoint presentation, or not PowerPoint, it's a Microsoft document that it's a first operational tour assignment of what second lieutenants should do and not do right out of the gates. So I can send that and he can share it with everyone. I share that with my mentor classes right out of the gate, so they have a pretty decent idea what to do. Other than that, that's a lot I've spoken about. So I'm open to questions now, or if anyone else wants to chime in. So I see one. Do you need an engineering degree for this? You don't. So I know the Space Force is really pushing towards like STEM degrees, but like I said, I'm a psych degree, and my master's that I'm almost done with is in international relations. So I have no STEM background at all. I hate math, but what I'm teaching is a little bit of math. It's I teach the radio frequency portion of the course, so essentially electronic warfare. But again, my background is orbital warfare, so I had to learn all the electronic warfare in order to teach it. So we do a fairly good job of teaching everyone everything there is to do about space operations. So you'll feel prepared once you leave our course, at least. And also most of the like academy lieutenants that I get, and a decent amount of the ROTC ones, I get business majors, and some of those like random degrees that aren't STEMs at all. But I also do get quite a bit of the STEM degrees. So whatever your background's in, you'll do just fine in Space Force. All right, how long and often are let me scroll back up. Okay, how long and often are the electronic warfare deployments? So this big one, it depends. It changes pretty often. So my DO is actually the only electronic warfare officer in my squadron. So when he was at the 4th, he was at both the 4th and 16th. He had deployments ranging from 4 months. He had deployments at 8 months. It just depends on when you get to your unit, it'll change. So I could tell you it could be 6 months right now. And then by the time you actually get to your unit, it could be 4 months. It just depends. I've also seen year-long deployments. So yeah, I haven't seen anything longer than 12 months. So it could be anywhere between 4 and 12 months. And then it could also be a cycle. So it could be 4 months on, 4 months off. That just depends on the time that you're there. All right, how does the selection between disciplines work? All right, so we actually just changed it. So when you get to the schoolhouse, about halfway through the course, you'll have experience in orbital warfare, electronic warfare with radio frequency technology, part of the course. And we'll, at that point, talk about the differences of what SBM actually does. So you'll get a pretty good idea once you're here of what they all look like. So we'll give you a dream sheet that'll list off, actually have one around here somewhere. All right, so this is the one for my class right now. So we'll give you a sheet. It'll have all the desired locations, so all the locations you could potentially go to. And you'll list off all the bases 1 through X, however many bases we have. There's usually, I think we have 10 here. From there, you'll rate your space power disciplines 1 through 3, orbital warfare, space battle management, or electronic warfare. Then we'll ask you some questions that could influence you if you have like special situations such as like joint spouse requirements, if you have any special limitation codes or any prior military experience, those could sway in one direction or another. And then on the back side, you'll explain all of your explanations, or explain all your decisions as to why you selected them. And you could write however much you want. We'll read it all. So about 3.5 months through the course, AFPC will give our DOA flight commander, that's Captain Matthews currently, a list of, for the class that you're in, that the positions have to be filled from your class. So we'll match those. You won't see them, but based off your assignment worksheet that you gave us, which is, I would say, the most important thing that you could fill out. And once you get to the schoolhouse, we'll talk through it all over again of what it looks like. So taking that as well as input from the instructors that you had when the first 3.5 months of the course, we'll get together, have a meeting, and then based off your dream sheets, what's available, how you did in the course thus far, we'll decide on where the best, we'll make a recommendation as to where you should go. That's not saying that that's what you'll end up with, but that's the recommendation we are giving to AFPC and our commander, that this is where they will have the best success overall for their career, at least starting out as. But yeah, so that was pretty long-winded, but that's kind of how the selection between disciplines work. And you'll talk about all this all over again. Okay, so how long will you be an instructor? So for officers right now, it is a 3-year assignment. So I got here August 2019. I am set to depart in August 2022. However, I do plan on applying to weapons school next January. Well, apply next month, hopefully start next January. But all your first and second assignment tour is generally about 3 years. First assignment, depending on where you go, most of them are 3 years from the moment you are certified in your weapon system. Not, I did a 1.5 years of training, I'm only going to spend 1.5 years in the squadron. No, it's 3 years from when you are certified, with a couple exceptions based on the bases. When do we find out our home unit in the training pipeline? So right after we have that discussion of like, give the recommendations to AFPC, that's about the 3.5 month portion of the course. We'll get where you're going to go about 10 business days after we email AFPC our recommendations. So about around the 4-month mark in the course, you'll find out where you're actually going to be going.
Sir, we have time for one more question, and then Lieutenant Sheeler will be up to talk about more space operations on the operational side.
All right, so how long is the contract for this AFSC? So 13 Sierra. Most standard I've seen is about 4 years, 4 or 5 years generally. And then I can answer that one, last one really quick. What's where to train you 6.2s and 6.3s do? Same ones as 13 Sierras. So everything I just talked about.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. A lot of knowledge that you brought on to us, and I'm sure everyone is very excited to go down to Vandenberg or go to the training pipeline. Lieutenant Schuler, if you have any slides, feel free to request for the share. If not, then you are free to begin.
Cool, thanks, man. Can you all hear me? You can just give a thumbs up, you or Horvath could. Cool. Hey, Popcorn, by the way. Yeah, sorry, I don't have any slides, guys. I love the background, man. Yeah, so I don't have any slides, guys, but I'm definitely happy to pass along some old slides that we have if anyone's interested. If you just want to reach out to Alex, Terry, or anyone else, I can definitely pass that along. So yeah, 13 Sierra in general. I guess, Alex, are you looking for kind of like day in the life type stuff?
Yes, sir. More operational than training, as Captain Panic just kind of went over all that.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, so once you go through Vandenberg and do all of your initial training, you'll get to your unit. So there's a couple different types of units. It's kind of based on the bin that the Space Force puts you in. These bins are kind of a concept. You can almost think of them as AFSCs. Excuse me. So instead of like just having one general like 13 Sierra, they're kind of trying to like put you in specific bins so you build expertise, right? So pilots don't go and fly F-15s and then go fly C-17s or something. They stay within their airframe. So for us, they're binning us out into orbital warfare, electronic warfare, space electronic warfare, you'll hear it called, and then space battle management. So all of those you can think of orbital warfare as like just kind of like the guys who are actually working with the satellites. So probably what you generally think of with space battle management or SBM. That's a little more like missile warning and maintaining an overall picture of the domain. So what's going on in space, what are some threats to space and things like that. And then you can also, oh, my bad, thanks, Popcorn. Yeah, so it sounds like you already got the vents. And then electronic warfare is just jamming and figuring out who's jamming us. So all of my experience is coming from orbital warfare. So really, I'll talk a little bit on that, but my roommate has also been at a missile warning site. So that's more in that SBM category. So I'll talk about that. Generally, once you get done with training, you're going to be sitting on some sort of crew. And what that is when you're typically on some sort of rotating sleep schedule, working 24-hour ops. So depending on where you're working, so if you're working satellite ops or if you're working at a radar, something like that, it's going to look a little bit different. So if you're working satellite ops, there's going to be guys and girls on the floor who are actually talking to the vehicles, and then possibly people who are there actually planning what's going on the vehicle, and then a crew commander who's kind of overseeing everything and maintaining like the health and safety both of the crew and of the constellation or of just the system that you're working with. So that's pretty standard across the board. If we're talking kind of day in the life, what that would look like if you're a satellite operator, that would, no kidding, that's what my other roommate is actually out doing right now. So you're working with kind of antenna sites around the world, and those are reaching out and talking to our vehicles. So there are our satellites floating around in space. We have limited resources to talk to them. So they kind of work with other agencies within the Space Force who allocate those resources. We grab those antennas and then we're just downloading data, troubleshooting any issues that come up on the satellites, using guys like Popcorn, Captain Pereira to kind of help troubleshoot any issues that arise. For myself as a crew commander, one of the other things I was doing was just kind of submitting reports when things did go wrong. So if we aren't able to provide effects that commanders have requested of us, then we're submitting reports to kind of let them know like what's going wrong with that. So you pretty much stay on crew. I think that's pretty generic across the board as well. Once you've been on crew for a pretty set amount of time, it might be a year, it might be a couple of years, just depending on the unit and the assignments that you have, you'll be pulled into some sort of back shop. And the back shops are all the guys supporting operations. So I don't think I mentioned this at the beginning, but I'm from the same squadron as Captain Pereira. So I'm one SOPs. He probably gave a general overview of what we do.
Negative.
Wait, sorry, what was that, Popcorn?
Negative. I did not give an overview,
okay.
but I think actually Alex did give an overview a bit of what we do.
Heck yeah, cool. Yeah, sorry if there's any repeat info. Jumped in a little bit late here, so thanks for bearing with me, guys. But yeah, so generically, like the back shops that you'll have are engineering shops, so that'll mostly consist of kind of like your 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" type folks, so like Captain Pereira. We have an intel shop generally, and that might fall somewhere within the Delta, which is kind of like the group structure that you think of in the Air Force. So that'll fall either at the Delta or the squadron, but those guys are helping inform ops and giving you a better picture. So if you know that this satellite is a threat, they can help define that threat for you and its threat to your operations. So they kind of work on indications and warnings and just give more info as to what threats are out there, both Earth-based and those that are floating around in space alongside us. Other shops that you'll see are generally like a DOK shop, which is your weapons and tactics. That'll be usually led by a weapons officer, or you'll hear them referred to as patches. You have those in a lot of the operational career fields, I believe all of them. And those are guys who are pretty much just very, very specialized in the field, and they work a lot on things like debriefs. So they're really looking at how we can improve our operations at the squadron level, and then at levels above that. So DOK is kind of looking at that, how we can improve things, and then if something goes wrong or if anything changes, kind of looking at how we can best implement that or figure out what we did wrong, fix that, and best implement those changes. You also have an MPC, at least our level we do, that's a mission planning cell. Specifically for us, one SOPs, we're doing a lot of RPO missions, so getting close to other satellites for whatever purpose that might be. So when we do that, the mission planning cell is kind of taking our taskings and they're translating that to a level and planning all those engagements and then passing it on to the crew. So that's kind of a definition of all the back shops. Alex, I don't know, I think you've seen a couple of these before, and same with you, Cadet Horvath. So if you guys have any questions or anything that you think is useful, worth adding, let me know. But cool. Yeah, I can keep rolling. I think I can kind of glance over if there are any questions as well. At any point here, it looks like everyone's just throwing in their background. MA is a back shop. Yeah, so I don't know. I think I hit you all at the beginning, Popcorn, but I can talk a little more. So like the engineers, it's not just troubleshooting, but they're really able to translate like what's going on with the vehicles, and they should know if we're having technical issues. They should be the guys who are able to, no kidding, dig into that and work with like the really geeky, like push your glasses up engineers, and figure out what's going on with the system, and then translate that to operational speak. So those guys are awesome. At least Popcorn is awesome. So in the meantime, I don't know. Thanks, Popcorn. Yeah, I think I can kind of open up to questions from there. I don't know how much time we have left, Alex, so I don't want to take up too much of anyone else's time.
Yeah, so you got about 5 minutes.
Okay, cool. Have you've done like a pretty good overview of like all the deltas and everything, kind of like just talking high level, all that stuff? Okay. Yeah, would it be useful? You can just give a thumbs up, Alex or Horvath. Like, is that like going over the deltas and stuff? Would that be helpful?
Yes, sir. That would be helpful for us.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna mess some of these up, but there's basically the whole structure of the Space Force now. So we're broken out into 3 field commands. You can kind of think of those as your MAGCOM equivalents. So we have Space Operations Command, or SPOC. I apologize for the abbreviations. That's what other bigger people came up with, not us. So we have SPOC, Space Operations Command. That's no kidding, like all of your operations that are going on. We're also going to have, let's see, and yeah, Popcorn, feel free to jump in if you want to hop on any of those. We have one right now called Star Delta Provisional. That's going to end up moving up to StarCom, so Star Command. That's our Space Training and Readiness command. So that will be a lot more of like your training out at Vandenberg, all of your kind of like your developmental education, and things like that. So if we aren't deferring to the Air Force to do kind of like a like SAS or ACSC, if you've ever heard of those, Air Command and Staff College, that's kind of the same functions that those will be supporting. And then Popcorn, I don't know if I'm drawing a huge blank on the last one right now.
STARCOM, SPOC, and SSC.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so SSC, that'll probably fall a little bit more under Popcorn's realm. So that's a lot more of like your acquisitions realm. So they're going to be buying the toys that Spock can then go and play with, is a really high level overview of it. Really important function and really cool because they kind of get to define the requirements of what we need. Within Spock specifically, there's 9 deltas. So right now, Delta, let's see. So there's the Star Delta Provisional, which is kind of sort of hanging out under Spock until they get more leadership built up. And that's, again, what's going to be leading training and testing type functions. And then you can move through the deltas. I don't know if you have them written down, Popcorn. I can hit 8 and 9 really well. Okay, that'd be awesome. Yeah, thanks for the assist.
Yeah, man. So the way it's laid out right now is as Lieutenant Schiller laid down, was the Star Delta is currently provisionally under Spock at the moment, but as soon as we get more people, that'll follow its own STARCOM. The remaining deltas are Delta 2 for SDA, Delta 3 for Space Electromagnetic Warfare, previously known as Space Electronic Warfare. That's a brand new nomenclature change. Delta 4 is Missile Warning, Delta 5 is Command and Control, Delta 6 is Cyber Warfare, Delta 7 is ISR, and Delta 8 is SATCOM, NAVWAR, which is your military satellite communications and navigational warfare. And then the best Delta of them all is Delta 9, which is where Kyle and I are from. So fingers crossed you guys get to go to OW.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Popcorn. Yeah, so we can answer some specifics on that. I actually gave a brief on Delta 2 to Popcorn's class the other day. So really high level, like SDA is space domain awareness. That's just keeping a picture of what's going on out in space. Either looking at one really specific object or looking at the whole picture so that we know what's going on there. Electromagnetic warfare, that's going to be your stuff, again, like we were saying earlier, kind of jamming or figuring out who's jamming us. I think 4 is missile warning. So missile warning is going to be more up at Buckley. That's in around Denver in Colorado. That's going to be a lot more, or that's going to be where that's focused. It's missile warning, exactly how it sounds. You can go to Delta 5 as your C2. So again, that's kind of like those control nodes. You're going to be thinking more operational level, right? If you're thinking tactical, operational, and strategic, you're more at that operational level where you're overseeing a whole like suite of sensors or a whole network of sensors, and then kind of tasking those out. You have more of that tasking authority. 7, sorry, that's ISR, right, Popcorn?
Correct.
Yeah, ISR, so that's your intel function. A lot of you probably won't be landing over there. I think there might be opportunities there. Delta 8 and Delta 9 are both at Schriever in Colorado Springs. Delta 8, you're going to be working 4 stops or 2 stops, so either MilSatCom or GPS, like Popcorn was saying. That's just kind of working with customers who are actually using that. We all use GPS, right? So they actually have people who are kind of working with control functions for that, but they're also commanding and controlling the satellites. And then you have Delta 9 orbital warfare, which is unbiased, but also biased, the best Delta out there. I think we just do really cool stuff and have a lot of really fun toys coming out down the line. But yeah, I think that's a general overview, and I think that brings us about to the end of time. So I don't know if anyone has questions to pop in the chat, or if you have anything, any closing remarks, Alex, that you want to drop in.
I believe Cadet Colonel Horvath is doing the closing, but that was an excellent brief, Lieutenant Schiller. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, if anyone has anything to say, last closing remarks, just open it up before we all kind of head off of this Zoom meeting. Go for it.
Hey, I'm gonna steal the floor for just a second. I don't know how many 6.2s or 6.3s or just acquisitions folks in general that we have, because the Space Force is so flat, meaning that it's kind of small. For all of my acquisitions, Bubba's, you need to make sure you're getting end user feedback because it is a consistent problem in our career field. So if I can put that seed in now, please, please, please be reaching out to your Bubba's across the way, your 13S's, to get their feedback so that way you can make a better product. Because it was a little bit of a misnomer when Kyle was saying that we come up with the requirements, but it's also the actual fact. We do come up with the requirements, and what that means is we design the products. And a lot of times we do that in a vacuum, erroneously, when we really should be reaching out. So establish the connections with your 13 Sierras now, so that way you can reach to them and say, hey, what do you actually need so I can make it? Very important. It's probably the downfall of our career.
And I'll just add one thing. I sent Cadet Terry a do's and don'ts of what you should, doing or not doing at your first ops unit. So if you want to tag him to get that list, feel free to do so. It's in his email now. I'm also free to answer questions for the next 10 minutes if you want to stick around.
Yeah, same. I can hang around for questions. And actually, sorry, I don't mean to step on your toes, Horvath, but just answer a question. It looks like there's one in the chat, and if you don't mind me dropping this out for everyone who asked the question, but it's just kind of elaborating on why Delta 9 is the best. I think Popcorn could drop on that too. But yeah, I really like Delta 9. So I think there's a reputation around it once you're in the Space Force and like people have been around and kind of hear about it. It's like this cool, mysterious thing behind doors. And it really doesn't need to be. I just think we have a really cool mission. So when you talk orbital warfare as a bin, like as a whole function, it's kind of just looking at like contacting satellites and the way that I best think of it is more so like working with satellites, if you will. But I think when we say word orbital warfare as a delta, and that's like no kidding what we do, it's on our little identifier tab right here. It's hard to see because of the lighting. Yeah, and Popcorn's got his too. So it's cool because what we're doing is like, no kidding, when our space power doctrine is saying like, we provide independent options in space. So we're no longer a support function, but we're saying like, hey, things that we do in space can actually have strategic implications. I feel like we're the ones who are enacting that. So I think it's cool to kind of sort of be that tip of the spear, not to use that like overused term, but it does feel like we are at the tip of the spear and not playing the support function, which is also vital and a really cool thing. But I just like being able to play with the satellites and have a little more freedom in that. Hopefully that answers the question. Feel free to shoot another message if that doesn't.
That's great, sir. Thank you. Yeah, if anyone has any questions right now, type them real quick. And like the gentleman said, they're gonna stick around if you guys have any questions. But this was basically what we wanted to do tonight, just provide an informative time where you can hear from these officers and what a little bit into their career fields and also training process. So we hope it was beneficial for you. I want to just say thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time out of your day to meet with us and to provide this information to everyone who is interested, and also the future guardians, because we know the Space Force is going to be a great branch. So just a quick thank you for that. All the information that you did hear, hopefully, like I said, it was beneficial. We will send out the contact information to everyone. This brief is also recorded, so we can also send that to anyone who requests it. Our contact information is on the slide, so jot that down. But yeah, if you have any questions now or later, feel free to contact any one of us and we'd be happy to talk with you. But with that being said, you guys are free to go. And again, thank you for joining.
Hey, Kyle,
Yeah, what's up?
you know, Delta 9 is the coolest because we're in it, right? That was
Well, I mean, yeah, that's another part of it.
you
I
know,
forgot to mention that one. Hopefully they all caught that.
well, I mean, I guess it's inherent knowledge, but
Should be right.
yeah, I mean, we're both coming from OW, it's going to be a cool place to be.
Yeah. Hey, are you all, Alex and Horvath, are you guys sending out our contact info, or do you want us to like drop it in here or anything?
I know that the other gentleman dropped theirs in, and I don't know if they took note of it. So yeah, we can always send that out to them, just in case they didn't write it down.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if you want me to drop it in here or send it to y'all or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Hey, Alex Panek, I think you have a question from John Zemini.
I'm reading it right now. I'm trying to think of what resources for training. So if you look up STK Systems Toolkit, there might be, I think, some sort of maybe testing or level 1 cert you could get through that. That'll be a lot of like whatever orbital warfare training looks like.
Hey, Alex, actually, I wrote my thesis and I used STK like crazy, and
Go for it.
I wasn't tied with a military license on that one. You can actually go into the AGI website, and yeah, like Alex was saying, you actually get a trial period for 2 weeks for every level that you go for. So there's 3 levels. It's like beginner, master, and then the coolest name of all, grandmaster, is your level 3. And each one of those comes with a 2-week trial period. But if your 2-week trial period expires, they're pretty bro about just, hey, we'll extend it. So very, very cool. And it was jaw dropping every time I was in there, like getting a new module, learning a new one. It's like, holy smokes, you're telling me we have the ability to do this on our home PCs? Very cool stuff. Very exciting.
Yeah, I would highly recommend using STK if you can before you get here, because it's a big learning curve and you'll be using it for probably 2 to 3 weeks of your time in the course. And it's right now currently the space standard, at least for orbital warfare. One stops people correct me if I'm wrong.
A little bit of free
Yes,
flyer,
sir. Oh, go ahead, sir.
some free flyer too, but free flyer is a little more niche. It's cheaper, that's why.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. What I was going to say with that is if you contact the companies, we here at Purdue actually contacted them. They're giving us unlimited amount of software licenses for free for a lifetime trial period. So, yeah, feel free to reach out to the companies and you can get a free software license.
Dude.
Yep, that's with a university email, though.
I'm also working on getting augmented reality training into the course as well. I know Captain Schultz at One Stops was also looking into it. I haven't spoken to her for a little while. But I know 50 OSS is definitely looking into it. We're actually working with the same company.
That lifetime free trial, by the way, is not limited to just EDU accounts. It's just anybody. It doesn't come with all the bells and whistles, but it does come with you could put a satellite in orbit around the Earth, super easy. But you don't. And I only say that because, I mean, it's not less pertinent to the crowd that we're talking to right now because they all have .edu accounts. But I've been out of school for a bit and I don't have an EDU, so I was able to get it.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen.
We're the last ones in. Maybe some people walked away and ate some dinner and forgot to log off. That's something I've done before.
In there, yeah.
Awesome.
It looks like that is most of the questions already there. Y'all did such a good job. They don't have any questions left.
Something like that, right?
Yeah, or people do have dinner they need to get to, right?
We really appreciate you all coming out and giving your time and spreading your knowledge. And like I said, this was open to the entire nation. So this wasn't just Purdue or the region. This was the nation selects and a few interested cadets. So I'm sure that means a lot to them. It's coming from active Space Force officers.
Hey, Kyle, I'll write you a bullet for this if you want.
Yeah, thanks, man. Do enough presentations, I'll have enough for a whole OPR.
Exactly. Well, cool, dude. Hey, thanks for organizing this. This is really cool to be able to reach out into the commissioning officers that'll be, taking our places as we progress through. And it's nice to be able to see where everyone's minds are at, especially in a new service.
Sure, I'll see y'all, at least the new commissioned officers, hopefully sometime later this year.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. Getting to see everybody. That's so cool.
Dude, yeah.
And I'm not going to remember anyone.
They're going to be like, remember that Zoom call? And you'd be like, no, dog.
Not at all.
It's happened twice already. I can't recall who they were.
Sweet. All right. Well, I'm about to sign off. It was super great getting to meet everybody. And again, if anybody has any questions about anything that we went over, especially on the acquisition side, or anything that I put in that little career synopsis, definitely let me know.
Yes, sir. We'll do.
Absolutely, sir. Yeah. Thank you again.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thanks for having us.
Popcorn out.
Yo, Alex or Nicole, are you guys commissioning?
I
this
am.
year?